Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We've heard a lot today about CII and its potential impacts on the market. So today what we're going to do is look at what we've done to monitor this CII product. So just first a little bit about VesselsValue. I'm sure most of you know that we've had a background in asset valuation, but we're now looking towards the future and green. And we've done that in two ways. First, looking at EEXI, and now looking at CII. We've done that using our technical database, using the ship spec, and also our AIS data to understand the vessel movements and put that together to monitor the CII. So the background for today, we're just going to look a little bit about what CII is and how it's calculated. Then we're going to move on and look at a simple set of analysis which allows us to understand potentially what the implications will be in each of the markets. And then we're just going to have a look at the conclusions to finish. So I'm sure everyone's very familiar with the AER. We've mentioned it a few times today. But essentially, this is the formula that the IMO have adopted to calculate CII, and they're going to band each ship into A being best or E being worst. And those that are sat in bands D and E are going to be up for regulatory action and potentially efficiency improvement programs as well. So for the purpose of today, we're going to look at the three main ship types: bulker, tanker, and container, and one ship size from each, so the Handymax, the VLCCs, and the Panamax, and we're looking at a time period from June 21 to May 22. Important to note here, the data that we're producing can actually be utilized across different time segments, not just the one we're looking at today. Okay, so just to give a brief overview, looking at the VLCC, the Handymax, and the Panamax container segments here, we can see that comparatively the VLCC market is achieving a relatively low AER, and in comparison the Panamax containers are achieving something a little bit higher. What's important to note here is that just because Panamax are much higher does not necessarily mean that they're going to be sat in bands D and E. It's exclusive to each ship type. So if we give the breakdown into each of these ship sizes, we can see for the Handymax, 10% of the fleet are going to be sat in bands D or E. For the VLCCs, around 30%, and Panamax containers, about 2/3. There's probably good reason for this, and we'll have a look at the drivers towards AER, or increasing AER, in just a second. So we've looked at three drivers here, and the first one we've looked at is age. What we're looking at here is any kind of relationship in the graph on the left, or any kind of differentiation in the graph on the right-hand side. And what we can actually see here is it's remained relatively flat. There doesn't seem to be any true correlation between increasing age and increasing AER. We did look at the underlying data, and we did see that actually the older vessels were being operated slower, probably for a fuel efficiency note. But actually, on the whole, it doesn't seem to make much difference. The second we've looked at is vessel utilization, utilization being defined as the amount of time vessels are spending underway. And again, here we can see that there's no real underlying trends coming on either side here, which is surprising, particularly with the amount of congestion that we've had in this time period. We'd expect that to have more of an impact. Final driver is speed. We can see this is painting a very different picture. We've got very clear upward trajectory as the increased speed happens, and as a result of that, more vessels landing in bands D and E. So looking at those drivers, what we can conclude is that essentially we're going to have to slow down. What we've done, I won't bore you with the maths, but what we've done here is essentially calculated the reduction in speed by looking at the percentage to band C and its distance, and then what that will calculate when it comes to speed reduction. As a result of that, we can actually use the VesselsValue model. In our valuation algorithm, we use market sentiment to understand the potential value of the asset. And so looking at the changes in speed directly impacting earnings change, we can see how that's going to impact value. If we look at this graph here, we can see that the VLCCs are less impacted. This is probably due to discounted rates over the time period we're looking at here. So we can see we're familiar with the graph on the left-hand side, but as we move across, we can see what the capacity mile reduction is for each of these assets, and also what that means in terms of value reduction. Unfortunately, my face is distorting the view there, but we can see that for VLCCs it's about 1%, but on the Panamax side it's nearly triple that at 3%. So what we've looked at so far is bands D and E and what it will take to get to band C, but it's also important to note that there are a lot of vessels already operating in bands A, B, and C, and there may be potential incentives for them to keep at that efficiency, we don't know yet, but also they have the potential to speed up, so there is potential for increased value on those assets. So looking at this, what we can understand is there's going to be significant capacity removed from the market. Looking just at the Handymax, Panamax container, and VLCC markets, we can see that there's going to be a required order book uplift of somewhere between 20 and 35% respectively. Of course, we've heard a lot about today different alternatives to improve efficiency. I think what this is indicating is if we don't do anything about the way that our vessels are being operated currently, these are the potential implications and what we're going to need to do in order to address that. So just to run through what we've looked at today, we can know that older vessels are capable of satisfying CII requirements, typically by traveling at lower speeds. If the IMO is to achieve its decarbonisation targets, it's likely that that will be through removed vessels in the market or removal of cargo capacity through speed. And there are some vessels that are going to be able to speed up as a result of being in bands A to C. Thank you.